Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Wednesday, so we are going to continue the series on Jose Raul Capablanca. We are continuing the 1901 match series, when Capablanca was 13 years old and basically mopped up everybody who played chess on Cuba. And in this game he played Leon Paredes, whom he played twice. And he played most opponents in the match series twice. So in this game he was white. His opponent played the French defense, and I think from an e4 player's perspective, this is a very instructive game. But from a d4, from an e6 French defense player's perspective as well, and I think it should be very instructive. So we have e5, c5, the normal advanced French, and now c3. And now the whole idea of the advanced French and of white's strategy against it is that white wants to have a broad center, having this e5 pawn in the middle of black's position sort of causing issues, and black has to undermine that straight away with the move c5, creating a weakness on d4. White of course doesn't want to defend the e5 pawn with just his f3 knight, so the d4 square is permanently protected. White doesn't, for example, play knight f3 and after cd knight d, because in that position the e5 pawn would be weak, and after something like knight c6 white would be virtually forced to either trade, or in this case he could defend with c3. So the whole idea is black wants to undermine the center, white wants to defend it. White is going to have a huge weakness on d4. Okay, so c3 defending that, knight c6 again putting pressure on d4, and here I don't know how familiar you are with the advanced French, but knight f3 is probably the only move played on the high levels. This is the so-called Paulsen attack. It supports the weak d4 pawn, develops a piece, prepares to castle, and it's basically the best move. Now here black has two options, either bishop d7 developing, or queen b6 putting pressure on d4 straight away. If queen b6, then the variations get quite complicated. White continues with a3. The idea behind a3 is to undermine the c5 pawn and to create a broad expansion on the queen side as well, meaning that the bishop could go to b2 and that white would have more control over c5 and over d4. So in this position black either plays c4 closing the position down, or he continues with knight h6 with the idea of knight f5, and in this position after b4 cd4 cd4 knight f5 you can see again that the whole idea of in the black position is to put pressure on d4. White continues with bishop b2, etc, etc. So that's how this position is played. Capablanca played a very weak move. He played the move f4, which seems very sensible, having said all this, that white wants to support the center, wants to support e5, wants to support d4. Unfortunately, it wastes too much time, doesn't develop a piece, creates a huge weakness, and gives black the option to basically be positionally winning on move 5. Now, I would invite you to pause the video here and try to create a plan for black. And in this position, if you find the correct plan, then you probably could be easily winning already. In the game, c takes d was played, which is a move you can always play. It doesn't really matter. You're going to play it eventually. But it was perhaps more precise to start with knight h6. And after knight h6, white will have no easy way to defend the d4 pawn. Of course, g4 would be very risky, allowing, for example, queen h4 check and basically completely destroying your position. So if you play g4 trying to stop knight f5, then queen h4 check, and well, you can probably just resign. I don't know if you play probably king d2, and now I just take on g4. Okay, so after knight h6, let's say white plays knight f3, which is the normal move, defending d4, defending h4. Now you're in trouble. Queen b6, again, 1, 2, 3 attackers on d4, 1, 2, 3 defenders, but knight f5 is coming. If we exchange, then bishop b4 is coming, and it's not going to be easy. Now let's say knight bd2 is played, because if you move the bishop to e3, then b2 is hanging. If you, for example, play knight a3, which doesn't block in the bishop, prepares knight to c2, defending d4, then I can play cd, cd, bishop takes a3, b takes a3, and knight f5, and again 1, 2, 3 against 1, 2, and it's not easy to defend this. You may defend for the moment, but eventually the pawn is going to fall and you're going to lose. So against knight h6 there would have been no good defense. Instead cd4 was played, which is, as I said, fine. And after cd4, queen b6 played by Leon Paredes, and knight f3 by Capablanca, a normal move and a developing move. Now in this position, again, Paredes should have played knight h6, and after something like knight c3, simply knight f5. And here probably the only move to defend would be knight e2, but now bishop b4, check. And you're probably best advised to go king f2 here. I don't think bishop d2 works. And yeah, after bishop d2, I believe just knight e3 is a very good move, gaining a tempo on the queen, and I think this just wins. Instead of that, Paredes starts wasting time. He plays bishop d7, and this gives Capablanca just enough time to regroup. Now he could have played a3, which I think would be best to stop bishop b4 check and knight b4, and after something like a3, knight h6, knight c3, knight f5, you can continue knight a4, chasing this queen away, and all of a sudden white has some play. It's not over. After bishop d7, Capablanca played knight c3, which is also fine. Rook c8 played, Rook c8 played by Paredes, rook b1 by Capablanca, and this is an okay move. The idea is a3, b4, and the queenside expansion. Bishop b4, pinning the knight. Now I think an imprecise move. I think bishop e3 was necessary. Now that the b pawn is defended, you want to develop your bishop and defend d4 and eventually be able to connect your rooks. Instead he moves the queen, which is not bad, but it blocks the bishop, so at least intuitively and visually it doesn't look good. a6, stopping knight b5, and then eventual knight d6 after white moves the king to safety. a3 played, bishop e7, the bishop retreats, b4, and now white's position is good. White has managed to develop, white has managed to seize control over the queen side, and everything seems fine. Finally, black plays knight h6, too little too late to have a huge advantage, but still a good plan of putting pressure on f5. Okay, finally bishop e3 played, and now knight f5 played. And in this position, Capablanca played the move that loses the game on the spot. And I'll ask you to pause the video and figure out why. He played the move bishop f2, saving the bishop and saving the bishop pair, basically not allowing knight takes e3. So figure out why this loses. Okay, this move loses because it undefends the e1 a5 diagonal, and there's a tactical weakness on the diagonal. So after bishop f2, black can now use the fact that this bishop is no longer able to unpin, to defend c3, and to defend the king. So a crushing variation would have been knight takes b4. And in this position your queen is attacked, so you either have to move the queen or you take the knight. The obvious a takes knight loses instantly to bishop takes b4. This knight is pinned, it's already attacked by the rook, and you may be wondering, well, the rook attacks the queen, so I might be good. So let's say I unpin, you're not going to take because I take your queen. So for example, rook takes knight, queen takes rook, bishop takes rook, and rook takes queen will be equal. But instead of that, black can just continue with queen a5, and now it's all over. For example, rook takes b4, I think would be forced, queen takes b4, knight d to b1, but this pin is so annoying that there will be no defense. You can continue queen b5, the knight is pinned, the queen moves, you take the bishop, king takes, for example, rook c4, putting pressure on d4, absolutely crushing. So after bishop f2, using this pin would have been just winning for Capablanca's opponent. Also, if after knight takes b4 you just move your queen, let's say queen d2, then I can continue queen c7. Again, your knight is attacked. Excuse me, my knight is attacked, but your knight is attacked as well. So if you take my knight, I'm going to take your knight, and you will again just be lost. In this position, it's just a pawn, but the activity of the black pieces is more important than that, and also the weakness of d4. So after bishop f2, black is winning. Instead, Capablanca should have just continued bishop e2, giving up the bishop and trying to castle, and then no tactical issues. After bishop f2, though, his opponent didn't see knight takes b4, he played knight a7, which I understand partially. You want to control the b5 square, you want to play knight b5, you want to maybe play rook takes c3 and then knight b5, but it's just too slow. Capablanca continues g4, and now it's not easy to defend this for white, because you have weakened your king so much. So now the king side is weak, d4 is weak, the c file is weak, so g4 is not a good move, I believe. Punishing it though isn't that easy. I think just playing knight h6 here would be okay, and then either undermining the position with f6 or trying to provoke g5 somehow to get your knight back into f5. In any case, g4 doesn't seem like a good move. However, black now plays the move that loses the game on the spot. I mean, his next move is tactically just losing. He plays knight b5, and knight b5 just loses the game. He thought, okay, you're attacking my knight, but I'm going to attack your queen by attacking your knight. And of course, this loses tactically because white has, I hope you can find it, knight a4, attacking the queen, gaining a tempo, also defending the c3 square. And that's just it. What he thought would happen, there are I think two things that he'd expected. He'd expected gf and then rook c3, which of course is winning for black. And then I think the other variation he was looking at was knight takes b5, bishop takes b5, of course gaining a tempo on the queen. And after the queen moves, then you move your knight to h6. So unfortunately both of those fail to knight a4, which doesn't allow rook c3 because the knight defends c3, and all of a sudden you have to move your queen and your knight is hanging. So after queen c7, pawn takes knight, knight takes a3 is, again, doesn't really do much. It's a tactic, but after takes and queen c2, black is going to at least regain his piece by taking queen takes a4. So bishop d3 defending the rook, queen takes a4. Bishop takes a4 was impossible because I would have taken the queen on c2. So queen takes a4, bishop takes a4. A queen trade happened, and now black is just completely lost, has no chance, a knight down, and with absolutely no counterplay. Even the c file is under control, only the c3 square is sort of critical, but I can play king d2. So Capablanca just plays king d2. This is, I think, one of the best moves in the game, just killing counterplay. Okay, black castles, f6, a perfect move, gf6, bishop h4, king h8. I mean, it's all over. It doesn't really matter what black does from here on. Capablanca just crushes him. Knight h6 here is a great move. Okay, and yeah, here his opponent resigned. Of course, you don't have king h7 because my bishop is controlling the square. So not a very precise game. I'm actually not going to be using the engine for this one. I'm going to try not to use the engine anymore. I hope my analysis is correct. What I would invite you to do is to find mistakes in my analysis and to correct me in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. Let me know what you think about the game. I hope it was instructive, and stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.